He demanded security remove the pregnant cleaner from his reception, but when they found 2 toddlers in her car holding his photo, his new wife saw the truth. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. The warm glow of the chandelier bathed the hotel lobby in golden light as Emily Johnson smoothed down her navy uniform skirt, her hands trembling slightly. 22 and still adapting to New York City's ruthless pace, she had secured this receptionist position at the prestigious Reynolds Grand Hotel 6 months ago, a miracle that allowed her to pay rent while attending business administration classes on a partial scholarship. "Good evening. Welcome to Reynolds Grand," she greeted automatically as the revolving door spun, admitting a gust of autumn air and a man whose presence immediately commanded the space. Nathan Reynolds. Emily recognized him instantly from the company newsletters and occasional staff meetings where he'd speak briefly before disappearing back into the upper echelons of wealth she could only glimpse. At 26, he was already being groomed to take over the Reynolds Hotel empire, his tailored suit and confident stride announcing his status more effectively than any name badge could. "Good evening," he responded, approaching the front desk with measured steps. "I need information about the Wellington reservation for tomorrow night, the presidential suite." Emily nodded professionally, though her heart raced as she typed the name into the system. "Of course, Mr. Reynolds." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You know who I am." "Everyone here does, sir." She kept her eyes on the screen, afraid her face would betray the intimidation she felt. "And you are?" He leaned slightly forward, reading her name tag. "Emily." She looked up then, meeting eyes so intensely blue they seemed almost manufactured. "Emily Johnson, sir." "Drop the sir, please. Makes me feel like my father." A smile transformed his face, revealing perfectly straight teeth and creating crinkles around his eyes that softened his otherwise sharp features. "Are you new here? I don't recall seeing you before." 6 months next Tuesday, she answered, surprised he would notice or care. Nathan studied her face for a moment longer than necessary. "The Wellington reservation, Emily?" "Yes, of course." She quickly provided the details, maintaining her professional composure despite the unexpected attention. When the transaction was complete, he lingered, glancing around the nearly empty lobby. "Thank you for your assistance. I'm sure I'll see you again." 4 days later, he did return, this time approaching the desk with purpose, ignoring the other available receptionists. "Emily Johnson," he said, as if testing how her name felt on his tongue. "I have a question that only you can answer." She looked up from her computer, a strand of chestnut hair falling across her face. "How can I help you, Mr. Reynolds? Would you have coffee with me after your shift?" The question hung in the air between them, so unexpected that Emily was certain she had misheard. "I'm sorry?" "Coffee, after your shift ends." He glanced at his watch. "Which is in 20 minutes?" Emily blinked, looking around to see if this was some elaborate joke. Her colleague Mia was watching with poorly disguised interest from the concierge desk. "I don't think that would be appropriate," she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan leaned closer, his voice equally soft. "I'm not your direct supervisor. There's no policy against it. Just coffee, Emily. I find you intriguing." 2 hours later, they sat across from each other at a small cafe 3 blocks from the hotel. Emily had changed out of her uniform into jeans and a simple blouse, the best she could do with the limited wardrobe in her locker. "Why me?" she asked after their drinks arrived, genuine confusion in her voice. "You must meet sophisticated women all the time." Nathan's smile was disarming. "That's exactly it. You're real. When you greeted me, you weren't calculating what you could get from me." "You can tell all that from a hotel check-in?" "I've been trained to read people since childhood. It's the family business. Hospitality is about understanding what people want before they ask for it." Their conversation flowed surprisingly easily, touching on her studies, his reluctant entry into the family business despite wanting to pursue architecture, and their shared love of old films. As dusk fell outside the cafe windows, Emily realized with a start that 2 hours had passed. "I should go," she said, gathering her bag. "I have an early class tomorrow." Nathan insisted on walking her to the subway, and as they reached the entrance, he stopped, looking around quickly before leaning down. The kiss was gentle, almost hesitant, nothing like the confidence he exuded in everything else. "Can I see you again?" he asked, his breath warm against her cheek. Emily nodded, something fluttering in her chest that felt dangerously like hope. Over the next weeks, they developed a pattern. Nathan would text, usually last minute, and Emily would rearrange her study schedule to meet him. They went to obscure restaurants in neighborhoods far from the Midtown Reynolds properties, saw late-night movies in nearly empty theaters, and once, memorably, spent an entire Sunday morning in Central Park before Nathan suddenly remembered a family obligation and disappeared for the rest of the day. The first time he visited her apartment in the Lower East Side, Emily spent hours cleaning the tiny space, acutely aware of its shortcomings. The building was pre-war, the elevator perpetually broken, the ceiling low enough that Nathan had to duck slightly when entering. "So this is how the other half lives," he remarked, scanning the modest furnishings, a futon that doubled as her bed, a small table with mismatched chairs, bookshelves made from crates. Emily's cheeks burned. "It's not much, but the rent is manageable with my scholarship and hotel salary." "It has its charm," Nathan said, but his eyes lingered on the water stain in one corner of the ceiling. "It's very authentic." That night, after they made love for the first time on her narrow futon, Emily lay awake listening to Nathan's breathing, wondering if this bubble of happiness could possibly last. She had read enough fairy tales to know that Cinderella stories rarely materialized in real life. In the glow of early morning, Emily slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Nathan. She had a midterm paper due, and despite the temptation to spend the morning wrapped in his arms, her scholarship depended on maintaining her GPA. Settling at her small desk, she opened her laptop and continued working on her analysis of corporate sustainability practices, occasionally glancing at Nathan's sleeping form. When he finally stirred, he watched her work for several minutes before speaking. "You're really serious about this business degree, aren't you?" Emily nodded without looking up. "It's my ticket out of living paycheck to paycheck. My mom worked 2 jobs my whole life and still struggled. I don't want that." Nathan approached, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Ambitious. I like that." He kissed the top of her head. "Though you should know, dating a Reynolds could be an even faster ticket." She turned to face him, frowning slightly. "I'm not dating you for your family name, Nathan." "I know," he said quickly. "That's why I like you." As weeks turned into months, the pattern of their relationship became clear. Nathan would appear in her life like a whirlwind, lavishing attention and affection, then disappear for days with vague explanations about family business. He never invited Emily to his apartment, never introduced her to friends or family, never acknowledged their relationship at the hotel where she still worked. For her 23rd birthday, Nathan presented her with a red designer dress that must have cost more than 3 months of her rent. "It's beautiful," she gasped, running her fingers over the luxurious fabric. "But where would I wear something like this?" "When we're together," he answered, watching her hold it against her body. "Just for me." Emily frowned slightly. "Not out somewhere?" "You know it's complicated, Emily. My father has very specific ideas about the company image, about who I should be seen with. And I don't fit that image," she stated flatly. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "It's not about you. It's about appearances, connections, old money nonsense. I'm not like them. I don't care about those things." "Just enough to hide me away," Emily whispered, but she accepted the dress, and when she wore it for him the following weekend, his appreciation seemed to make the compromise worthwhile. One afternoon, Emily was working the front desk when a colleague, Vivian, approached. In her 50s and a hotel veteran, Vivian had always been kind to Emily. "Be careful with that one," she said quietly, nodding toward a framed photo of the Reynolds family that hung in the lobby. "Pardon?" Emily tried to look confused, though her heart raced. "I've been here 23 years, honey. I notice things." Vivian's eyes were kind but serious. "The Reynolds men view people like us as interchangeable, disposable, just parts in their machine." "It's not like that," Emily protested weakly. Vivian patted her hand. "I hope you're right, dear. Just remember your worth doesn't depend on their validation." 6 months into their relationship, Emily realized her period was late. After 3 days of denial, she purchased a pregnancy test, her hands shaking as she paid the pharmacy cashier. In the tiny bathroom of her apartment, she followed the instructions meticulously, then sat on the edge of the bathtub, watching the timer on her phone count down. When 2 pink lines appeared clearly on the test, Emily sank to the floor, her back against the cool porcelain of the tub, mind racing. They had been careful, mostly, but nothing was foolproof. Memories flashed through her mind. Nathan mentioning he was an only child, how his family expected him to marry appropriately someday, his reluctance to make their relationship public. But beneath the fear, a small flame of hope flickered. Perhaps this would change everything. Perhaps now he would acknowledge her publicly, introduce her to his family, commit to the future she had begun to dream about despite her practical nature. 3 days later, Emily prepared a special dinner in her apartment. She splurged on ingredients she normally couldn't afford: fresh herbs, a good cut of meat, a bottle of non-alcoholic wine that looked nearly identical to the real thing. She wore the red dress he had given her, arranged candles around the small space, and waited, rehearsing what she would say. Nathan arrived an hour late, distracted and tense. "Sorry," he said, kissing her quickly. "Board meeting ran long. My father's preparing me to take over more responsibility." "That's wonderful," Emily said, trying to match his enthusiasm. "I made dinner to celebrate." As they ate, Emily tried to gauge his mood, waiting for the right moment. He spoke animatedly about the new properties the company was acquiring, barely noticing her nervous silence. Finally, as they finished the meal, Emily took a deep breath. "Nathan, I have something important to tell you." He looked up, his expression softening. "You've been quiet tonight. What is it?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Nathan's face froze, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth. "Pregnant?" he repeated, as if hearing a foreign word. "You're sure?" Emily nodded, pulling the test from her pocket and placing it on the table between them. "I took this 3 days ago, and another one yesterday." Nathan pushed back from the table abruptly, standing to pace the small room in 3 quick strides. "How did this happen? We were careful." "Not always," Emily said quietly. "Remember last month, after the charity gala you attended?" He ran both hands through his hair, his breathing shallow. "Are you absolutely certain it's mine?" The question hit Emily like a physical blow. "What? Of course it's yours. Who else would it be? I've never been with anyone else since we met." Looking at the test on the table, his face hardened in a way she had never seen before. "Emily, you're a sweet girl, but you have to understand. This can't happen right now. My father has already arranged an appropriate match for me with the Sullivan daughter from Boston, someone from our circle." The room seemed to tilt on its axis. "Arranged a match? What are you talking about? We've been together for 6 months. And it's been fun, really. You're lovely. But this was never going to be permanent." Nathan's voice had taken on a coldness that transformed his handsome face into something unrecognizable. "My family has expectations. The company has an image to maintain." Tears blurred Emily's vision. "So all this time I was just... what? A distraction until your arranged marriage? Don't be dramatic. You knew who I was, what world I come from." He began collecting the few belongings he kept at her apartment: a spare tie, an extra phone charger, a toothbrush. "I'm keeping this baby," Emily said, her voice trembling but determined. Nathan sighed heavily. "You can solve this problem, you know. There are clinics. I'll give you the money." "I will not abort our child." The words erupted from her with unexpected force. His expression hardened further. "Then you're on your own. My name cannot be associated with this kind of scandal. You will never be enough for the world I belong to, Emily. You're mediocre, common, dead weight to my career." The cruelty of his words stole her breath. This couldn't be the same man who had whispered declarations of affection against her skin just days earlier. "Nathan, please," she whispered. "This is your child, too." "No, it isn't. And I've already informed your landlord that I won't be covering your rent anymore. You have 48 hours to make other arrangements." "You've been paying my rent?" Emily felt sick. "I never asked you to do that. Consider it severance." He moved toward the door, not meeting her eyes. "Don't contact me again, Emily. It's over." The door closed behind him with a quiet click that seemed to echo in the sudden emptiness of the apartment. Emily stood frozen, unable to process the complete destruction of her life in less than 15 minutes. Looking down at her belly, still flat beneath the red dress he had given her, Emily felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with pregnancy. With shaking hands, she checked her bank account on her phone. $650. Not even enough for next month's rent, let alone preparing for a baby. That night, Emily slept on the floor of her apartment, having torn the sheets from the futon where they had so recently made love. She cried until no more tears would come, one hand protectively curved over her abdomen, the other clutching her phone, waiting for a call or text that never came. Looking at the positive test in her hands, Emily couldn't imagine that this small object indicating a new life would also be the catalyst for her own destruction and subsequent rebirth. Looking at the positive test in her hands, Emily couldn't imagine that this small object indicating a new life would also be the catalyst for her own destruction and subsequent rebirth. Emily spent the night preparing for the conversation that would change everything. The tiny kitchen in her Lower East Side apartment filled with unfamiliar aromas as she carefully followed a recipe she'd found online. Herb-crusted salmon, Nathan's favorite. She had splurged on ingredients she couldn't afford, maxing out her credit card for what she hoped would be a celebration dinner. The table was set with the mismatched dishware she'd collected from thrift stores, but she'd arranged everything with precision, placing a small vase with a single rose in the center. She smoothed the wrinkles from the tablecloth, actually a clean bedsheet, and adjusted the silverware one final time. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Running late, board meeting with father, see you at 8. Emily glanced at the clock. 6:30. She had time to shower and change into the red dress he'd given her. The expensive fabric felt foreign against her skin as she zipped it up, the slight nausea she'd been experiencing for weeks fluttering in her stomach. She practiced her announcement in the mirror, trying different approaches. "Nathan, we're having a baby. I have wonderful news. I know this is unexpected, but..." None sounded right. How did one announce a life-changing event to someone who might not welcome it? Still, Emily clung to hope. Nathan loved her. He'd said so during their most intimate moments. This might accelerate their timeline, but surely he would adjust. By 8:15, the candles were lit, casting a warm glow over the modest apartment. By 9, they were halfway melted, the salmon growing cold on the serving plate. At 9:30, Emily heard his key in the lock. "Sorry," Nathan said, kissing her cheek briefly. "Father's grooming me for more responsibility. The meeting ran long." He loosened his tie, scanning the elaborate dinner setup. "What's all this?" "I wanted to celebrate your new responsibilities," Emily said, the rehearsed lie coming easily. She needed him relaxed before her announcement. They ate, Nathan dominating the conversation with tales of corporate acquisitions and expansion plans. Emily picked at her food, the salmon she'd been craving now turning her stomach. "You're quiet tonight." Nathan finally noticed, reaching for his wine glass. "Everything okay at the hotel?" Emily placed her fork down carefully. "Nathan, I need to tell you something important." His expression softened slightly. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them, fragile and momentous. Nathan froze mid-sip, slowly lowering his glass. "Pregnant?" His voice sounded distant, as if speaking from underwater. "You're sure?" With trembling hands, Emily withdrew the test from her pocket, placing it on the table between them. "I took this yesterday, and another one this morning." For a long moment, Nathan stared at the plastic stick as if it were a venomous snake. Then he pushed back his chair abruptly, standing to pace the small apartment, 3 quick strides from wall to wall. "Pregnant?" he repeated. "How did this happen? We were careful." "Not always," Emily said softly. "Remember after the charity gala last month?" Nathan ran his hands through his perfectly styled hair, his breathing shallow. "Are you absolutely sure it's mine?" The question struck Emily like a physical blow. "What? Of course it's yours. Who else would it be? I've never been with anyone else since we met." He wouldn't meet her eyes, staring instead at the floor, the walls, anywhere but at her. "Emily, you're a sweet girl, but you have to understand. This can't happen right now." "Can't happen?" Emily echoed, disbelief coloring her voice. "My father has already arranged an appropriate match for me with the Sullivan daughter from Boston, someone from our circle." The room seemed to tilt beneath Emily's feet. "Arranged a match? What are you talking about? We've been together for 6 months." "And it's been fun, really. You're lovely." Nathan's voice had taken on a coldness she'd never heard before, transforming his handsome face into something unrecognizable. "But this was never going to be permanent. My family has expectations. The company has an image to maintain." Tears blurred Emily's vision. "So all this time I was just—" "What? A distraction until your arranged marriage?" "Don't be dramatic. You knew who I was, what world I come from." He moved to the corner where he kept a spare phone charger and tie, collecting them with methodical precision. "I'm keeping this baby," Emily said, her voice trembling but determined. Nathan sighed heavily. "You can solve this problem, you know. There are clinics. I'll give you the money." "I will not abort our child." The words erupted from her with unexpected force. His expression hardened further. "Then you're on your own. My name cannot be associated with this kind of scandal." "Scandal?" Emily whispered, her hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. "You will never be enough for the world I belong to, Emily." Nathan's voice cut like ice. "You're mediocre, common dead weight to my career." Each word landed like a blow. This couldn't be the same man who had whispered declarations of affection against her skin just days earlier. "Nathan, please," she whispered. "This is your child too." "No, it isn't. And I've already informed your landlord that I won't be covering your rent anymore. You have 48 hours to make other arrangements." "You've been paying my rent?" Emily felt sick. "I never asked you to do that." "Consider it severance." He moved toward the door, finally meeting her eyes with a gaze devoid of the warmth she'd come to cherish. "Don't contact me again, Emily. It's over." The door closed behind him with a quiet click that seemed to echo in the sudden emptiness of the apartment. Emily stood frozen, unable to process the complete destruction of her life in less than 15 minutes. Looking down at her belly, still flat beneath the red dress he had given her, Emily felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with pregnancy. With shaking hands, she checked her bank account on her phone. $650. Not even enough for next month's rent, let alone preparing for a baby. That night, Emily slept on the floor of her apartment, having torn the sheets from the futon where they had so recently made love. She cried until no more tears would come, one hand protectively curved over her abdomen, the other clutching her phone, waiting for a call or text that never came. Morning arrived with cruel brightness, streaming through the window she hadn't bothered to cover. Emily's body ached from the hard floor, her eyes swollen from hours of crying. The reality of her situation crashed over her anew, pregnant, about to be homeless, abandoned. She forced herself to stand, mechanically filling a glass with water, knowing dehydration was bad for the baby. Her baby, their baby, regardless of what Nathan claimed. A knock at the door startled her. For one wild moment, hope surged. Perhaps Nathan had reconsidered. But when she opened it, she found her landlord, Mr. Petrovich, his expression grim. "Miss Johnson, I regret to inform you that your arrangement has been terminated. You have until tomorrow evening to vacate the premises." "Mr. Petrovich, please. I can pay the rent myself going forward. I just need a little time." The gentleman was very clear. The apartment has already been promised to new tenants. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm sorry." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Emily called every affordable housing option in the city, only to encounter waiting lists months or years long. She packed her meager belongings into 3 suitcases, donating what wouldn't fit to the thrift store downstairs. The dress, that red dress that now symbolized all of Nathan's false promises, she left hanging on the back of the bathroom door. On her last night in the apartment, Emily made a list of her assets and liabilities. Assets: $650 in savings, a job at the Reynolds Hotel, partial scholarship to business school. Liabilities: no home, no family in the city, pregnant with twins. The thought stopped her cold. She didn't know she was having twins yet. That revelation would come later, but already the magnitude of her responsibility felt overwhelming. Emily arrived for her shift at the Reynolds Grand Hotel the following morning with her suitcases stored in a 24-hour locker at the bus station. She had slept little, her mind racing with calculations and contingency plans. Still, she applied makeup carefully to hide her puffy eyes and pinned on her name tag with steady hands. The morning passed without incident until Patricia Whitmore, the hotel manager, called Emily into her office just before lunch. "Please sit down," Patricia said, her normally warm demeanor replaced by professional detachment. "Emily, it's come to our attention that you've been involved in a personal situation that could reflect poorly on the Reynolds brand." Emily's stomach dropped. "I don't understand. Your relationship with Nathan Reynolds was inappropriate given your position, and now we understand there are complications." "You mean my pregnancy?" Emily stated flatly. Patricia looked uncomfortable. "We value our employees' privacy, but when situations arise that could create negative publicity for our ownership family, you're firing me because I'm pregnant with Nathan's child? We're terminating your employment due to a violation of professional boundaries. Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks' severance." Patricia slid an envelope across the desk. "We'll need your name badge and key card before you leave." Emily walked out of the Reynolds Grand for the last time at 11:37 that morning, carrying a small box containing the personal items from her locker. Rain had started to fall, soaking through her light jacket as she stood on the sidewalk, staring up at the gleaming tower where her life had unraveled. 2 weeks later, Emily sat in a plastic chair at a diner, filling out an application for a waitressing position. She had secured temporary accommodation at a women's shelter, but they had a 30-day maximum stay. Her scholarship covered tuition but not living expenses, and most of her severance had already gone to storage fees for her belongings. "Any experience waiting tables?" asked the manager, a harried-looking woman named Gloria. "No, but I learn quickly. I worked front desk at a hotel, so I'm good with people." Gloria eyed Emily's still flat stomach. "This is hard work. On your feet 8, sometimes 10 hours. No benefits, just tips and minimum wage." "I can handle it," Emily said with more confidence than she felt. She got the job and 2 more like it. Morning shifts at a coffee shop near campus, evening shifts at the diner, and weekend overnight shifts at a 24-hour restaurant in Midtown. Between the 3 jobs, She cobbled together enough for a tiny room in a shared apartment in Queens, an hour's commute from her classes. The weeks blurred together in a haze of exhaustion. Emily attended morning classes, worked the lunch shift, studied between customers, worked the dinner shift, slept for 4 hours, then did it all again. Her pregnancy progressed, making each shift more challenging as nausea and fatigue became constant companions. In her 5th month, Emily finally visited a community clinic for a prenatal checkup, having put it off due to cost and time constraints. The waiting room was crowded, the equipment outdated, but the nurse who conducted her ultrasound had kind eyes. "Let's check on your little one," she said, spreading cold gel across Emily's slightly rounded belly. The nurse moved the wand across Emily's abdomen, her expression shifting from routine to surprise. "Well, look at that. Is something wrong?" Fear clutched at Emily's throat. "Not wrong at all. I'm seeing 2 heartbeats here. Congratulations, you're having twins." The world seemed to stop. Twins? 2 babies? 2 healthy babies from what I can see. You'll need to schedule a more detailed ultrasound, but everything looks good so far. Emily left the clinic in a daze, finding her way to a bench in a small park. Twins, 2 babies, 2 mouths to feed, 2 college funds to save for, 2 of everything. She performed mental calculations, doubling already impossible numbers, panic rising in her chest. That night, during her shift at the diner, a customer snapped his fingers to get her attention. "Hey, pregnant girl, my coffee's cold." Emily apologized, bringing a fresh cup. As she turned to leave, he added loudly, "Better hurry up, Baleia Encalada. Some of us have places to be." She didn't know much Portuguese, but she recognized the insult, beached whale, from a Brazilian co-worker at the hotel. Tears stung her eyes as she retreated to the bathroom, locking herself in a stall until she could compose herself. Standing before the streaked mirror in the dingy restroom, Emily took in her reflection. Dark circles under her eyes, uniform straining slightly over her growing belly, hair hastily pulled back from her face. She barely recognized herself. "Not going to let him be right," she whispered to her reflection. "I'm not mediocre. I'm not insufficient." Later that night, after closing, as she wiped down tables while other staff had already left, Emily placed her hands on her belly, feeling the first fluttering movements from within. "I promise you both," she whispered to the lives growing inside her. "I'm going to build a world so big for you that you won't even need to know who he was. And someday when he looks at us, he'll drown in regret." While Emily whispered this promise to her unborn children, she couldn't possibly know that 15 years later, it would be she who controlled the fate of the empire that had discarded her. "I promise you both," she whispered to the lives growing inside her. "I'm going to build a world so big for you that you won't even need to know who he was. And someday, when he looks at us, he'll drown in regret." The promise echoed in Emily's mind as she trudged up the steps to the women's shelter the following morning. Her feet ached from the double shift, first at the diner, then at the 24-hour restaurant. 10 more days before she would need to find permanent housing. The shelter's 30-day policy was strict and unyielding. Rain pelted against the windows as Emily collapsed onto her narrow cot, one of 12 in the shared room. The thin mattress offered little comfort to her increasingly tender body, but exhaustion pulled her under nevertheless. 3 hours later, her alarm jolted her awake. Another day, another shift, another step forward, because going back was not an option. On her way to the coffee shop for her morning shift, Emily passed the gleaming Reynolds Grand Hotel. Through the revolving doors, she glimpsed the elegant lobby where she had once greeted guests, where she had first met Nathan. The memory of his cutting words, mediocre, common, dead weight, propelled her forward, chin held high despite the hollow ache in her chest. "You're late again, Johnson," barked the coffee shop manager as Emily rushed through the back door, tying her apron around her slightly swollen middle. "Sorry, Mr. Reeves. The subway—" "Save it. Just get to the counter. We're swamped." For the next 6 hours, Emily served an endless stream of impatient customers, many from the same corporate world Nathan inhabited. Some never looked up from their phones as they barked orders. Others complained about minor imperfections in their elaborate coffee concoctions. By noon, her lower back throbbed, but she kept moving, kept smiling, kept calculating how many more shifts she needed to secure first and last month's rent on an apartment. 3 weeks later, Emily stood in the cramped room she had rented in a shared Queens apartment, surveying her new home. A twin mattress on the floor, a small dresser rescued from the curb, and a folding chair constituted her furniture. Her textbooks, her lifeline to a better future, were stacked neatly beside the mattress. "It's just temporary," she told her growing belly as she unpacked her clothes. "We won't be here forever." The roommates, 3 nursing students who worked opposite shifts, barely acknowledged Emily's presence, which suited her fine. She had little energy for social niceties between her 3 jobs and online classes, which she now attended remotely to accommodate her work schedule. One Tuesday morning in her 4th month, Emily awoke to find blood on her sheets. Terror gripped her as she rushed to the community clinic, praying the entire subway ride. "Spotting can be normal," the nurse practitioner reassured her after an examination. "But you're showing signs of exhaustion and dehydration. You need rest, proper nutrition, and prenatal vitamins. Are you getting enough sleep?" Emily nodded, the lie easy after weeks of practice. 4 hours between shifts was enough. It had to be. "Your blood pressure is concerning," the nurse continued, frowning at the chart. "How many hours are you working?" "Just part-time," Emily murmured, avoiding eye contact. The nurse's gaze softened. "There are resources available: food assistance, Medicaid, housing support." Emily accepted the brochures with downcast eyes, knowing already that most programs had waiting lists longer than her pregnancy. Still, she completed the applications that evening, adding them to the growing stack of paperwork that represented potential lifelines. 2 weeks later, she received her first piece of good news: approval for prenatal nutrition assistance. The modest monthly supplement wouldn't solve all her problems, but it meant one less decision between food and rent. As her pregnancy progressed into the 5th month, Emily's uniforms grew tight across her expanding middle. She used safety pins to extend the waistbands and borrowed larger shirts from the lost and found at the diner. Her shifts became increasingly grueling, her feet and back protesting the long hours standing. "You need to schedule a detailed ultrasound," reminded the clinic nurse during Emily's checkup. "We need to monitor twin pregnancies more closely." Emily scheduled the appointment for her rare day off, mentally calculating the cost against her meager savings. The community clinic offered sliding scale fees, but every dollar spent was one less for the future. The ultrasound room was small and dimly lit, the equipment visibly dated. The technician, an older woman with gentle hands, spread cold gel across Emily's rounded belly. "Let's check on these little ones," she said, moving the wand methodically. The grainy image on the screen shifted, and suddenly Emily could make out 2 distinct shapes: 2 heads, 2 bodies, 2 beating hearts. Her own heart seemed to stop. "Would you like to know the genders?" the technician asked. Emily nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "Looks like a boy and a girl. Perfect matching set." The woman smiled, pointing out features on the screen. "Both measuring right on schedule, good fluid levels. They look healthy. A boy and a girl, a son and a daughter. 2 perfect beings who would depend entirely on her." The responsibility was overwhelming, but as she watched the tiny figures move on the screen, something fierce and protective unfurled in Emily's chest. "I'll get you some printouts," the technician said, pressing buttons on the machine. Emily clutched the black and white images on her way out, stopping at a park bench to study the first pictures of her children. In the grainy photos, she searched for signs of herself, and yes, perhaps of Nathan too, though she pushed that thought away quickly. That evening, during her shift at the upscale Midtown restaurant, Emily served a group of business executives celebrating a merger. Their loud laughter and casual displays of wealth, $1,000 bottles of wine, Offhand comments about summer homes reminded her sharply of the world Nathan inhabited, the world that had rejected her as unworthy. As she refilled water glasses, one man glanced at her pregnant belly with undisguised disdain. "You'd think they'd staff appropriately," he muttered to his companion, just loud enough for Emily to hear. "I don't need to be reminded of someone's poor life choices while I'm eating." Emily's cheeks burned, but she maintained her professional demeanor, finishing her task before retreating to the kitchen. In the relative privacy of the staff area, she pressed her palms against the cool metal prep table, breathing deeply until the humiliation subsided. "Don't let those jackasses get to you," said Marco, one of the line cooks, sliding her a plate of pasta. "Eat something. Those babies need food." Emily accepted the unexpected kindness with a grateful smile. "Thanks. Long night ahead." "You working yourself too hard, Mama?" Marco replied, his fatherly concern evident. "My sister lost one working 3 jobs during her pregnancy. Be careful." The warning stayed with Emily as she finished her shift, then traveled the hour back to Queens for a precious few hours of sleep before her morning coffee shop shift. Her body felt increasingly foreign. Swollen ankles, aching back, the strange fluttering movements from within that sometimes took her breath away. As her 6th month began, disaster struck. Arriving at the coffee shop for her morning shift, Emily found the doors locked, a notice from the health department posted in the window. Temporary closure for violations, which meant no shifts, no tips, no income from her most reliable job. That same week, the diner cut her hours, claiming customer complaints about her increasingly visible pregnancy. "People come here to eat, not think about childbirth," the manager explained with a shrug that suggested he found the situation regrettable but inevitable. With her income suddenly reduced by more than half, Emily faced impossible choices. Rent was due in 10 days, and her carefully managed savings wouldn't cover both housing and food. She applied for emergency assistance, only to be told the processing time was 4 to 6 weeks. After a particularly grueling overnight shift at the 24-hour restaurant, Emily found herself in the bathroom during her break, staring at her reflection in the spotted mirror. Her face was nearly unrecognizable, hollow cheeks, dark circles like bruises beneath her eyes, skin sallow despite the pregnancy glow she'd heard so much about. Her uniform, borrowed from a larger co-worker, stretched tight across her middle. A customer had called her Baleia Encalhada, beached whale, when she was too slow bringing his refill. The Portuguese insult had become something of a regular occurrence from the night crowd, who found her pregnancy an easy target for their alcohol-fueled cruelty. Tears slid down Emily's cheeks as exhaustion and fear threatened to overwhelm her. She was failing before she'd even begun. How would she possibly support 2 babies when she could barely support herself? "No," she whispered fiercely to her reflection. "I will not let him be right." Wiping her tears with a paper towel, Emily straightened her shoulders. She had survived the past months on determination alone, and she would continue surviving. More than surviving. She would build something lasting, something that would make her children proud. "I am not mediocre," she told her reflection. "I am not insufficient." After her shift ended at 4 in the morning, Emily didn't go back to the apartment in Queens. Instead, she found a 24-hour diner near her campus, ordered a cup of tea she could barely afford, and opened her laptop. For the next 3 hours, she researched housing assistance for student parents, grant opportunities, academic scholarships, and childcare options. She emailed her academic advisor, explaining her situation and requesting information about remote learning options after the twins were born. She applied for a hardship grant from the university's emergency fund. She drafted a budget that accounted for every penny, cutting out anything that wasn't absolutely essential. As dawn broke over the city, Emily walked to campus for her first in-person class in weeks. Her professor had insisted on face-to-face meetings for the midterm presentation, and she couldn't risk her grade. Each step was an effort, her body protesting the lack of rest. But she pressed forward. After class, her professor asked her to stay behind. "Emily, your work is excellent, but you seem stretched thin." "I'm managing, Professor Martinez," she replied, gathering her materials. "There's a program I think you should know about," he said, sliding a brochure across the desk. "For student parents. It includes priority housing, childcare assistance, and mentoring." Emily scanned the information, hope rising cautiously. "Is there a waiting list?" "Yes, but as a student expecting twins, you'd have priority status." He hesitated. "Emily, asking for help isn't failure, it's strategy." That evening, in the quiet of the campus library, Emily completed the application, attaching her ultrasound images and a personal statement that laid bare her determination to create a better life for her children. As she hit submit, a small movement fluttered in her belly. A kick, stronger than before, as if in approval. Walking back to the subway, Emily placed both hands on her growing middle. "I'm doing this for you," she whispered to the twins. "Everything I do now is building your future." In the dim light of the train, Emily pulled out her course materials, studying despite her exhaustion. A woman across the aisle watched her with undisguised pity, the pregnant student, clearly struggling, clearly alone. Emily met her gaze steadily until the woman looked away. She would be pitied now, perhaps. Judged, certainly. But Emily knew something they didn't. This was merely the beginning of her story, not the end. One day, these same people would see her differently, and Nathan Reynolds, the man who had discarded her as worthless, would realize too late what he had thrown away. With the twins' heartbeats as her constant companions, Emily continued forward, one painful step at a time, toward a future only she could see clearly, a future where his cruel dismissal would be proven wrong in every possible way. While Emily whispered this promise to her unborn children, she couldn't possibly know that 15 years later, it would be she who controlled the fate of the empire that had discarded her. While Emily whispered this promise to her unborn children, she couldn't possibly know that 15 years later, it would be she who controlled the fate of the empire that had discarded her. The hospital room was sterile and impersonal, harsh fluorescent lights casting shadows across Emily's exhausted face. At 22 years old, she lay alone in the delivery ward of Manhattan General, her only companion a compassionate nurse named Rosa, who had taken a special interest in the solitary mother-to-be. "Just breathe through it, honey," Rosa encouraged as another contraction seized Emily's body. "You're doing great." 36 hours of labor had stripped away any remaining dignity. Emily gripped the nurse's hand, her knuckles white with effort. I can't do this anymore." "Yes, you can," Rosa insisted firmly. "You've come this far alone. These babies need you to be strong for just a little longer." 3 more agonizing hours passed before the doctor announced, "I can see the first head. One more big push, Emily." With a guttural cry that seemed to come from somewhere beyond herself, Emily pushed, and suddenly the room filled with the indignant wail of new life. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, placing the tiny, squirming infant briefly on Emily's chest before whisking her away for examination. "She's beautiful," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face. But there was no time to marvel. The second baby was coming. 14 minutes later, her son entered the world with an equally impressive set of lungs. When the nurses finally placed both swaddled infants in her arms, Emily stared in wonder at their perfect, wrinkled faces. "Hello, Olivia," she whispered to her daughter. "Hello, Ethan. It's just us 3 against the world now." Rosa stayed beyond her shift, helping Emily with the first feeding. "You got someone coming to help you?" she asked gently. Emily shook her head. "No family here, just us." The nurse's eyes softened with concern. "You have somewhere to go? With 2 babies?" "I have a place," Emily assured her, thinking of the tiny studio apartment she'd secured in the Bronx, the cheapest she could find that wasn't completely uninhabitable. "We'll be fine." 3 days later, Emily stood in the center of her new home, each arm cradling a newborn. 2 second-hand cribs donated by a church charity occupied most of the available floor space. A futon mattress pushed against the wall would serve as her bed. The shared bathroom was down the hall, the kitchen barely large enough for a mini refrigerator and hot plate. "Home sweet home," she murmured to the sleeping twins. "It's not much, but it's ours." The first weeks passed in a blur of exhaustion so profound Emily sometimes found herself crying without realizing she'd started. The twins operated on opposite schedules. When Olivia slept, Ethan wailed. When Ethan finally settled, Olivia demanded attention. Sleep came in 30-minute increments, never enough to clear the fog from Emily's mind. Between feedings and diaper changes, Emily frantically searched for work she could do from home. Her savings had dwindled to almost nothing, and the modest government assistance barely covered formula and diapers, let alone rent. On a particularly desperate night, with both babies finally asleep, Emily opened her laptop and searched for night cleaning jobs NYC. An advertisement caught her eye. Corporate office cleaning, night shift, 14-hour. The pay was modest, but the hours, 11 at night until 5 in the morning, might just work if she could find a solution for the twins. The interview with Clean Corp was brief and impersonal. The supervisor, a stern woman named Janet, looked skeptical when Emily asked if she could bring her infants. "Absolutely not. This is a professional environment." Emily was about to leave when an older woman emerged from the back office. "Janet, let me handle this." She introduced herself as Martina, the night shift manager. "How old are your babies?" 6 weeks, Emily replied, hope flickering faintly. Martina studied her for a long moment. "My daughter was a single mother too. Bring them, but they stay in the carrier. You work quickly, efficiently, and if they cry, you handle it immediately. I'll assign you to the quieter buildings." That night, Emily fashioned a makeshift double carrier from a large fabric wrap, securing the twins against her chest. They slept miraculously as she vacuumed offices and emptied trash bins, their warm weight both comforting and exhausting as she worked. By the third night, Emily had developed a system. The twins slept in their stroller while she cleaned each floor, the gentle hum of the vacuum often lulling them deeper into slumber. When one woke hungry, she would feed them in an empty conference room, then continue working with renewed determination. On rare nights when both babies slept simultaneously, Emily would use the quiet offices to study. Her laptop balanced on a receptionist's desk, textbooks spread beside cleaning supplies, she worked through her business administration coursework, determined not to abandon her education despite everything. "You're taking classes?" Martina asked one night, finding Emily highlighting a textbook while eating a sandwich during her break. Emily nodded. "Business administration. I was halfway through when—" She gestured to the sleeping twins. "Good for you," Martina said, genuine admiration in her voice. Most would have given up. "Giving up isn't an option," Emily replied simply. As the months passed, the twins grew, developing personalities as distinct as their appearances. Olivia, with her serious eyes and delicate features, watched the world with quiet intensity. Ethan, louder and more demanding, had his mother's determined chin and a smile that appeared early and often. At 10 months old, they accompanied Emily to her graduation ceremony, dressed in matching outfits purchased from a second-hand store. When her name was called, Emily crossed the stage with her head held high, accepting her bachelor's degree in business administration with honors. The audience's applause was punctuated by Ethan's enthusiastic babbling and Olivia's solemn observation. Professor Martinez, who had become something of a mentor, approached her after the ceremony. "Emily, I've been meaning to talk to you about your thesis." Her final paper, Efficiency Optimization in Outsourced Service Industries, had started as a practical analysis of her work at Clean Corp, but evolved into a comprehensive business strategy. "Your analysis of operational inefficiencies in corporate cleaning services is remarkable," he continued. "You've identified a genuine market opportunity here." Emily shifted Olivia to her other hip. "Thank you, but it's just theoretical. It doesn't have to be. Professor Martinez handed her a folder. This is information about Harvard's MBA program. They have a fellowship specifically for exceptional students with demonstrated entrepreneurial potential. I've already recommended you. Emily stared at the folder, her heart racing. Harvard? With twins? That's impossible. Difficult, not impossible, he corrected. They have family housing, childcare resources. Think about it, Emily. Your insights are valuable. You could transform an entire industry. That night, after tucking the twins into their cribs, Emily opened the folder and began to read. The fellowship would cover tuition and provide a modest stipend. Harvard had family housing options and a childcare cooperative for student parents. The application deadline was 3 weeks away. For 7 nights straight, Emily worked on her application after the twins fell asleep, refining her business concept, drafting and redrafting her personal statement. On the 8th night, she submitted the application, too exhausted to second-guess herself. 6 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived. Emily's hands trembled as she opened it, the twins playing at her feet. "Ms. Johnson," the letter began, "we are pleased to offer you admission to Harvard Business School's MBA program with a full fellowship." Emily sank to the floor, the letter clutched to her chest. Olivia immediately crawled over, patting her mother's wet cheeks with curious fingers. "We're going to Cambridge," Emily whispered to her children, gathering them close. "We're going to build something amazing." The move to Harvard's family housing was a revelation. After years in a cramped studio, the small 2-bedroom apartment felt luxurious. The twins, now 3 years old and fiercely independent, explored every inch of their new home with delight. "My room?" Ethan asked incredulously, standing in the small bedroom with its twin beds. "You share with Olivia," Emily explained, unpacking their few belongings. "And this is Mommy's room." She pointed to the even smaller second bedroom that would double as her study space. Campus life required careful orchestration. Emily arranged her classes during the hours the twins attended the university's subsidized preschool program. Evenings were sacred family time. Dinner together, bath time, stories before bed. Once they were asleep, she would study until exhaustion claimed her, typically around 2 in the morning. To supplement the fellowship stipend, Emily secured a position cleaning the administrative offices, familiar work, but now with the twins safely in their beds rather than accompanying her. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was once again cleaning to support her family, but this time each sweep of the floor felt like a step toward something greater. Her MBA cohort was dominated by students from privileged backgrounds, many from families like the Reynolds. Initially, Emily kept to herself, acutely aware of the differences between her life circumstances and theirs. But in group projects, her practical experience and unique perspective often provided insights her classmates lacked. "How did you know the maintenance staff would resist the new tracking system?" a classmate asked after Emily's prediction proved correct during a case study. "Because I've been the person being tracked," she answered simply. "People resist what makes them feel like machines rather than valued team members." As her first year in the program progressed, Emily refined her business concept. The cleaning industry was ripe for disruption. Corporations were increasingly outsourcing services to cut costs, but most vendors provided substandard service with exploited workers. Emily envisioned a company that would offer superior quality through well-trained, well-compensated employees, proprietary efficiency systems, and ecological cleaning products. In her entrepreneurial management course, Emily presented her initial business plan. The professor, a former venture capitalist, peppered her with challenging questions. "Your model assumes premium pricing," he noted. "Why would corporations pay more when cheaper options exist?" "Because the true cost of cheap is high," Emily responded confidently. "Inconsistent service quality, high employee turnover, theft, security concerns, these hidden costs add up. Our model eliminates these inefficiencies while providing superior service." After class, the professor pulled her aside. "Your concept has merit, Johnson. Have you considered applying for small business loans to launch after graduation?" The suggestion planted a seed that would grow over the coming months. During her second year, Emily devoted her limited free time to developing a comprehensive business plan, researching loans and grants, and building financial projections. One evening, as Emily studied at the kitchen table, the twins working on a puzzle nearby, Olivia looked up and asked, "Mommy, why don't we have a daddy like other kids?" The question, though inevitable, caught Emily off guard. Ethan immediately abandoned the puzzle, equally interested in the answer. Emily chose her words carefully. Some families have a mommy and daddy, some have two mommies or two daddies, and some, like ours, have just one parent. "But where is our daddy?" Ethan persisted. "Your father chose not to be part of our family," Emily said gently. "That was his choice, not because of anything about you. Some people aren't ready to be parents." "Is he dead?" Olivia asked with characteristic directness. "No, he's not dead. He just lives a different life, one that doesn't include us." "Do you miss him?" Ethan's small face was serious. Emily considered the question honestly. "I don't miss him, but I'm grateful for him in one way. He gave me you two, the best gifts I've ever received." The conversation shifted as quickly as it had begun, the twins returning to their puzzle with the easy adaptability of children. But that night, after they were asleep, Emily allowed herself a rare moment of reflection on Nathan. His cruelty had nearly destroyed her, but it had also set her on this path, a path that was beginning to look remarkably like success. As graduation approached, Emily applied for a small business loan through a program supporting women entrepreneurs. Her business plan, refined through countless revisions and strengthened by her Harvard MBA, secured her a modest $25,000, barely enough to start, but a beginning nonetheless. While Emily signed the loan documents in a small Brooklyn bank, she couldn't know that these hastily scribbled notes in a used notebook would become the first draft of what would become Manhattan Commercial Cleaning Services, a company that would one day be worth millions. While Emily signed the loan documents in a small Brooklyn bank, she couldn't know that these hastily scribbled notes in a used notebook would become the first draft of what would become Manhattan Commercial Cleaning Services, a company that would one day be worth millions. The June sunshine spilled through the windows of the small auditorium as Emily stood among her fellow graduates, the crimson robes of Harvard Business School draped over her shoulders. 3-year-old Olivia and Ethan sat in the audience, fidgeting in their Sunday best under the watchful eye of Martina, who had traveled from New York for the occasion. When Emily's name echoed through the speakers, Emily Johnson, graduating with high honors, the twins erupted in enthusiastic applause, their small voices carrying clearly across the hushed room. "That's our mommy," Ethan announced proudly, causing ripples of indulgent laughter. After the ceremony, Professor Ramirez sought Emily out among the crowd of celebrating families. "Your thesis was exceptional, Emily. You've identified a genuine market opportunity in corporate cleaning services." Emily smiled, adjusting Olivia on her hip. "Thank you, Professor. It's based on practical experience." "That's precisely why it works," he replied, handing her a business card. "A colleague at First Boston Investment Group saw your presentation last month. He's interested in discussing potential funding for your concept." Emily stared at the card, momentarily speechless. "Funding? For my cleaning service model?" "Your operational efficiency framework is innovative," Ramirez explained. "The way you've structured employee training, ecological product integration, and technological oversight addresses pain points that major corporations struggle with. Don't sell yourself short. This isn't just a cleaning service, it's a business solution." That evening, in their campus apartment soon to be vacated, Emily sat cross-legged on the floor between the twins' beds, reading their favorite bedtime story. Her mind kept drifting to the business card tucked in her pocket, to the possibility it represented. "Again, Mommy," Olivia requested when the story ended. "Tomorrow, sweetheart," Emily promised, kissing each child's forehead. "We have a big day ahead. We're going home to New York, remember?" "Will we have a bigger house?" Ethan asked sleepily. Emily smoothed his hair. "Not yet, buddy, but someday." After the twins fell asleep, Emily spread her business plan across the kitchen table. The concept had evolved significantly during her MBA studies, transforming from vague ideas into a comprehensive strategy. She had identified a specific gap in the market. Large corporations increasingly outsourced cleaning services to cut costs, but most vendors provided mediocre service with underpaid, undertrained staff. Her model offered superior quality through well-trained employees, proprietary efficiency systems, and ecological products, at competitive prices achieved through innovative operational methods. The next morning, Emily and the twins boarded a bus to New York, their possessions packed into 4 suitcases. They were leaving the relative security of Harvard's campus for the uncertainty of entrepreneurship. The dormitory for student parents had been their home for 2 years, the first stable housing the twins had known. Now, they were starting over again. "Look, Mommy, big buildings!" Ethan pressed his face against the bus window as Manhattan's skyline came into view. "That's where we're going to live," Emily told him. "That's our home." Their new apartment was a 1-bedroom walk-up in Brooklyn, small but clean, with large windows that flooded the space with light. The twins would share the bedroom while Emily converted part of the living area into her sleeping space. It wasn't ideal, but the rent was manageable with her careful budgeting and the modest income from freelance consulting work she'd secured to tide them over. 2 weeks after their return to New York, Emily met with the investment banker Professor Ramirez had connected her with. She dressed in her only professional outfit, a navy suit purchased from a consignment shop, and prepared meticulously for the meeting. "Your concept has merit," James Harrington stated after Emily presented her business plan in his Manhattan office. "But $25,000 isn't enough capital for what you're proposing." "It's enough to start," Emily countered. "I can begin with a small team, targeting mid-sized office buildings, and scale up as we prove our model." Harrington's skepticism was evident. "The cleaning industry is saturated with competition. What makes your approach different?" "Everyone treats cleaning as a commodity," Emily explained, leaning forward. "I'm positioning it as a professional service that directly impacts workplace productivity and corporate image. Our staff will be trained not just in cleaning techniques but in customer service and safety protocols. We'll use proprietary scheduling software I've developed to optimize workflow. Most importantly, we'll pay living wages and provide benefits, resulting in staff stability that our competitors can't match." The meeting ended without a commitment, but Harrington promised to review her materials further. 3 days later, his assistant called to schedule a follow-up. By the end of the month, Emily had secured an additional investment of $25,000 in exchange for a 15% equity stake, enough combined with her loan to launch Manhattan Commercial Cleaning Services. Finding commercial space proved challenging on her limited budget. Emily eventually leased a tiny storefront in a less desirable part of Brooklyn, its grimy windows and peeling paint a stark contrast to the professional image she envisioned for her company. "It's perfect," she told the twins as they explored the empty space, their footsteps echoing on the worn wooden floors. "We just need to clean it up." Over the next 2 weeks, Emily transformed the storefront with sweat equity. She scrubbed floors, patched walls, and painted every surface in the company colors she'd chosen, deep blue and silver. The twins helped in their way, Olivia meticulously arranging supplies while Ethan enthusiastically applied paint wherever he could reach. "This is our company," Emily told them as they stood back to admire their work. "We built this together." Emily's first employees were women she'd met during her cleaning days, single mothers like herself, struggling to balance childcare and work. Maria, Sophia, and Letitia joined Manhattan Commercial Cleaning Services with a mix of hope and skepticism. Emily's promise of steady hours, living wages, and respect was appealing but sounded too good to be true in an industry known for exploitation. "We start with training," Emily explained during their first team meeting in the freshly painted office. "We're not just cleaners. We're professionals providing a specialized service." For 2 weeks, Emily taught them the efficient cleaning techniques she'd developed and refined during her years working nights. She explained the proprietary scheduling system she'd created, which optimized workflow and tracked completion times. She trained them in customer service, professional communication, and the technical aspects of the eco-friendly products they would use. "Why are we using these fancy products?" Sophia asked, examining the specialized glass cleaner. "They cost more." "Because they work better, they're safer for us and the environment, and they're part of what makes our service premium," Emily explained. "We're not competing on price, we're competing on quality." Securing their first client proved harder than Emily had anticipated. Cold calls went unreturned, emails disappeared into the void. Her carefully crafted marketing materials, designed on her laptop and printed at a budget copy shop, failed to generate interest. 6 weeks after launching, with expenses mounting and no revenue, Emily faced her first major crisis of confidence. Sitting at her desk after hours, the twins playing quietly in the corner she'd set up for them, she reviewed their dwindling funds with growing alarm. "We need one chance," she whispered to herself. "Just one client to prove the model." The opportunity came unexpectedly. While picking up Olivia and Ethan from their preschool program, Emily overheard another parent complaining about the cleaning service at her law firm. "They're completely unreliable," the woman sighed to the teacher. "Last night they didn't show up at all, and we have client meetings today in filthy conference rooms." Emily introduced herself immediately, business card in hand. "I couldn't help overhearing. My company provides commercial cleaning services, and we specialize in reliability and quality." The woman, Jessica Turner, office manager at a mid-sized law firm, eyed Emily skeptically. "Our current service costs us $800 monthly for 3 nights a week. We can match that rate for your first month," Emily offered, thinking quickly. "If you're not completely satisfied, you don't pay. If you are, we discuss a fair rate moving forward." That night, Emily and her team descended on the law offices of Turner, Braddock, and Wise. For 4 hours, they deep-cleaned every surface, organized kitchen areas, and left the space immaculate. Emily personally verified each area before they left, leaving her card on the office manager's desk with a note thanking her for the opportunity. The call came at 9 the next morning. "Whatever you did, keep doing it," Jessica Turner said. "The partners actually noticed and commented. When can you come back?" Within a month, word had spread. 2 more law firms signed contracts, followed by an accounting office and a small tech startup. Each new client received the same meticulous attention, the same personalized service. Emily worked alongside her team most nights, leaving the twins with a neighbor who watched them for a modest fee. As their client list grew, Emily hired 2 more employees, then 3 more. She developed a training program that ensured consistency across teams. She invested in better equipment that improved efficiency without sacrificing quality. She created detailed service plans customized to each client's needs. By the end of their first year, Manhattan Commercial Cleaning Services had 20 regular clients and 12 employees, all women, many single mothers. The tiny Brooklyn office now included a small break room where staff could rest and eat, and a play area where children could stay when childcare arrangements fell through. On the anniversary of their launch, Emily gathered her team for a celebration. "1 year ago, we started with nothing but an idea," she told them, looking around at the faces of women who had become like family. "Today, we're profitable, growing, and making a difference. Not just for our clients, but for ourselves and our families." The modest celebration, a cake from the bakery down the street, sparkling cider in plastic cups, felt like a triumph. The twins, now 4 years old, helped distribute slices to the team, proudly telling everyone, "This is our company." Later that night, after tucking the twins into bed in their shared room, Emily sat at her small desk and opened her laptop. She updated their business projections, allowing herself to imagine the future for the first time since launching. With current growth rates, they could move to a larger commercial space within 6 months. Within a year, they might expand to 50 employees, serving Manhattan's financial district. When Emily turned the key in that small Brooklyn storefront, She couldn't imagine that in just 8 years, she would be signing multi-million-dollar contracts with the same corporations that once considered her invisible. When Emily turned the key in that small Brooklyn storefront, she couldn't imagine that in just 8 years, she would be signing multi-million-dollar contracts with the same corporations that once considered her invisible. The early morning light filtered through the freshly painted windows as Emily and her 3 original employees, Maria, Sophia, and Letitia, arranged furniture in their new office space. The twins, now 5 years old, darted between boxes, helping by unpacking cleaning supplies and arranging them in colorful rows. "Mommy, where does this go?" Olivia held up a bottle of eco-friendly glass cleaner, her serious expression a miniature version of Emily's own focused determination. "On the supply shelf, sweetheart." Emily straightened, surveying the small storefront they'd transformed over the past 2 weeks. The faded for-lease sign had been replaced with a professionally printed banner, Manhattan Commercial Cleaning Services. The name had been Ethan's suggestion, direct, ambitious, and aspiring beyond their current Brooklyn location. "This place still needs work," Maria commented, wiping dust from a second-hand desk, "but it already looks 10 times better than when we started." Emily nodded, remembering the grime-covered floors and water-stained ceiling they'd encountered upon signing the lease. "We're proof that anything can be transformed with enough elbow grease and determination." Their first team meeting took place that afternoon around a scratched conference table salvaged from a sidewalk. Emily stood before her small staff, the business plan she'd refined through countless iterations at Harvard spread before them. "We're not just cleaners," she began, her voice carrying the quiet authority she'd developed during her years as a single mother. "We're professionals who transform spaces. Our clients don't just pay for clean floors, they pay for the feeling people get when they walk into an immaculate office. They pay for the impression it makes on their customers. They pay for one less thing to worry about." Sophia raised her hand tentatively. "But we are still cleaning toilets, no? Let's be realistic." Emily smiled. "Yes, we clean toilets, better than anyone else. We do work others look down on, but we do it with excellence and dignity. That's why we'll charge more, and that's why we'll succeed where others have failed." Over the next weeks, Emily worked alongside her team, demonstrating the efficient techniques she'd perfected during her years cleaning offices while the twins slept nearby. She taught them how to clean a bathroom in 7 minutes flat without missing a spot. She showed them how to vacuum in patterns that saved time while reaching every corner. She explained which surfaces needed daily attention and which could be maintained weekly. "You're like a cleaning scientist," Letitia remarked one evening, watching Emily demonstrate the correct dilution ratio for their eco-friendly cleaning solution. "I never thought there was so much to know about this work." "Every industry has its expertise," Emily replied. "We're just rarely given credit for ours." The twins became fixtures in the office, completing homework at a small desk Emily had set up in the corner while she fielded calls and prepared proposals. Olivia meticulously color-coded client folders while Ethan built elaborate structures from paper clips and rubber bands. Their presence was a constant reminder of why Emily pushed herself beyond exhaustion day after day. Their first significant client came through an unexpected channel. While waiting to pick up the twins from their after-school program, Emily overheard a harried executive complaining loudly into her phone. "I don't care what their excuse is this time," the woman snapped. "The investors are touring tomorrow, and I have coffee stains on the conference room carpet and bathrooms that smell like a subway station. Find me someone who can fix this tonight, or don't bother coming in tomorrow." When the call ended, Emily approached with a business card. "Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing. My company specializes in commercial cleaning, and we handle emergency situations." The woman, Alexandra Winters, COO of a financial tech startup, eyed Emily skeptically. "Can you be at our office in Midtown by 7 tonight? And can you guarantee the place will be spotless by 8 tomorrow morning?" "Absolutely," Emily promised, projecting confidence while mentally calculating childcare arrangements and staff schedules. "We'll exceed your expectations." That night became a turning point. Emily assembled her team, explaining the opportunity while distributing specialized cleaning supplies from their limited inventory. The twins accompanied them, sleeping on a makeshift bed of coats in an empty office while the team worked through the night. By dawn, the startup's offices gleamed. Every surface sparkled, every carpet had been deep cleaned, every bathroom sanitized and deodorized. Emily had personally supervised each aspect of the job, working alongside her team until her back ached and her hands were raw despite protective gloves. Alexandra arrived at 7:30, coffee in hand and skepticism evident in her expression. Her surprise was visible as she toured the transformed space. "This is impressive," she admitted, running a finger along a previously grimy windowsill. "How did you manage this overnight?" "Efficiency, expertise, and dedication," Emily replied simply. "This is what we do." By the end of that week, Manhattan Commercial had signed a contract with the tech startup, their first major client. Alexandra's recommendation led to 2 more contracts, and suddenly Emily found herself hiring additional staff to meet demand. The first year passed in a blur of 18-hour days. Emily worked alongside her growing team at night, handling administrative tasks and childcare during the day, sleeping in precious snatches between responsibilities. The twins grew accustomed to completing homework in client waiting rooms, to dinner from takeout containers eaten while their mother reviewed contracts, to falling asleep in the back of the company's first van, a used vehicle Emily had purchased with their early profits. As their client list expanded, Emily implemented the management systems she'd designed during her MBA studies. Each client received a customized cleaning plan based on their specific needs. Each employee underwent comprehensive training in Emily's methods. Each job was tracked through proprietary software Emily had developed with a programmer she'd met at Harvard, trading equity for technical expertise. When the time came to hire their first administrative assistant, Emily selected Jasmine, a young single mother with a 6-month-old daughter. "Your resume doesn't show any office experience," Emily noted during the interview. "No," Jasmine admitted, bouncing her fussing infant on her knee. "But I'm a quick learner, and I need a job that understands when my daughter gets sick, I can't just leave her with someone else. I don't have anyone else." Emily hired her on the spot. "Bring her with you tomorrow. We'll set up a play area next to your desk." This decision established a pattern that would define Manhattan Commercial's culture. Emily hired primarily women, many single mothers, creating a workplace that accommodated the realities of their lives rather than punishing them for their responsibilities. She offered flexible schedules, living wages, and a revolutionary benefit for the industry: health insurance. "We can't afford this yet," her accountant warned when Emily presented the healthcare plan. "We can't afford not to," she countered. "Our people are our company. If they can't take care of themselves and their families, we have nothing." The investment in her staff paid immediate dividends. Employee turnover, the bane of the cleaning industry, was virtually non-existent at Manhattan Commercial. While competitors struggled with constant retraining and quality control issues, Emily's team delivered consistent excellence. 18 months after launching, a critical moment arrived. Emily sat across from Richard Hargrove, the facilities manager for Monroe Financial, a prestigious firm occupying 10 floors in a midtown skyscraper. "Your proposal is 20% higher than your competitors," Hargrove noted, tapping a manicured finger on the document between them. "And we'll deliver 30% more value," Emily replied without hesitation. "Our team is professionally trained, background checked, and permanently assigned to your location. No rotating strangers through your offices. We use eco-friendly products that won't trigger employee allergies or damage surfaces. And unlike our competitors, we guarantee consistent quality every single night." Hargrove leaned back, studying her. "You're very confident, Ms. Johnson." "I know our capabilities, Mr. Hargrove. Sign with us for 3 months. If we don't exceed your expectations, you can terminate without penalty." The Monroe Financial contract doubled their business overnight. To meet the expanded workload, Emily hired 10 new employees, purchased 2 additional vans, and invested in higher-grade equipment. The risk was calculated but significant. If they failed to deliver, the company might not recover. For the first month, Emily personally supervised the Monroe job every night, often working until dawn before returning home to get the twins ready for school. Her hands cracked from cleaning solutions, her back spasmed from hours of bending and lifting, but she pushed through the pain with single-minded determination. Their performance not only satisfied Monroe Financial, it astonished them. Within 6 months, they had referred Manhattan Commercial to 3 partner firms. Within a year, Emily's company serviced 15 of the most prestigious buildings in Manhattan's financial district. As their 5th anniversary approached, Manhattan Commercial Cleaning Services had grown to 300 employees, serving 25 major commercial buildings throughout Manhattan. The tiny Brooklyn storefront had been replaced by a proper office suite with dedicated training facilities, a staff lounge, and a child-friendly area where employees' children could stay when childcare arrangements fell through. Emily stood at the window of her modest but professional office, watching her fleet of branded vans, now numbering 15, depart for the evening shift. Behind her, on the wall, hung her Harvard MBA diploma alongside a framed copy of her first business plan. The contrast between those early dreams and their current reality sometimes took her breath away. The office door opened and the twins, now 10 and developing distinct personalities, bounded in with their after-school energy. "Mom, Ms. Jasmine said you have to see this." Ethan waved a newspaper, his enthusiasm for everything mathematical and technical evident in his animated expression. Olivia, more reserved but equally excited, pointed to an article circled in red. "You're in the business section." Emily scanned the article with growing amazement. The piece profiled Manhattan Commercial as a disruptive force in the corporate services industry, highlighting their employee-centered approach and technological innovations. The final paragraph quoted a facilities director from a major corporation. "Johnson has transformed what was considered a commodity service into a strategic business advantage." That evening, during their anniversary celebration with the entire staff, Emily raised a glass of champagne. "5 years ago, we started with nothing but an idea and a belief that everyone deserves dignity in their work. Today, we're changing how an entire industry operates. This success belongs to all of us, to every person who believed in our vision and worked to make it reality." Later, after tucking the twins into bed in their modest but comfortable apartment, Emily reflected on how far they'd come. From cleaning offices with babies strapped to her back to managing a multi-million-dollar operation, the journey seemed surreal. Yet each step had been painstakingly planned, each victory hard-won through relentless effort and unwavering determination. Looking at the skyline of Manhattan from her window, Emily smiled at the thought that several of those gleaming towers now contained offices her company maintained. Nathan's words, mediocre, common, dead weight, had once cut her to the bone. Now they fueled a quiet satisfaction. The man who had deemed her insufficient had no idea that the company bearing his family name now contracted with hers for services they couldn't function without. Looking at the gleaming skyscrapers of Manhattan, several of them now her clients, Emily couldn't know that in just 2 years she would be cleaning the very building that housed the headquarters of Reynolds Hotels, whose air had once called her dead weight. Looking at the gleaming skyscrapers of Manhattan, several of them now her clients, Emily couldn't know that in just 2 years she would be cleaning the very building that housed the headquarters of Reynolds Hotels, whose air had once called her dead weight. The Sunday morning tradition in the Johnson household began precisely at 7:30. While most of Manhattan still slumbered, Emily stood in her Upper West Side kitchen, measuring pancake batter into a cast-iron skillet that had been a splurge purchase when Manhattan Commercial had signed its 20th major client. The sizzle of the batter hitting the hot surface mingled with the sounds of classical violin filtering through the apartment. Olivia practicing her scales in the living room. "Mom, can we go over my science project outline after breakfast?" Ethan asked, sliding onto one of the stools at the kitchen island, his tousled hair and serious expression making him look startlingly like Nathan for a brief, disorienting moment. Emily flipped a perfect golden pancake. Absolutely. But first, we need to plan the week ahead. Your violin recital is Thursday, Olivia, and Ethan, you have that math competition Saturday morning. At 12 years old, the twins had blossomed into remarkable individuals. Olivia, with her reserved demeanor and analytical mind, had discovered the violin at age 8 and displayed an intuitive understanding of music that left her teachers astonished. Ethan, outgoing and intellectually voracious, excelled in mathematics and science, approaching complex problems with a creativity that set him apart from his peers. "Mom, do you think Dad would have liked music?" Olivia asked suddenly, entering the kitchen with her violin still in hand. The question hung in the air, unexpected on this ordinary Sunday. Emily carefully placed another pancake on the growing stack. "That's an interesting question, sweetheart. I'm not sure. Why do you ask?" Olivia shrugged, setting her violin in its case. "Sophia's dad plays cello with her sometimes, I just wondered." These moments, these casual inquiries about the father they'd never known, had become more frequent as the twins approached adolescence. Emily had always been truthful but measured in her responses, never demonizing Nathan but never romanticizing him either. "I don't know if he played any instruments," Emily said thoughtfully. "We didn't know each other very long before I had you two." "Was he smart like Ethan?" Olivia persisted, helping herself to orange juice. Emily nodded. "He was very intelligent, yes. Good with numbers and business." "Did he look like me?" Ethan asked, suddenly engaged in the conversation. Emily studied her son's face, the shape of his eyes, the determined set of his jaw. "Yes, you resemble him quite a bit, actually." "Then why didn't he want us?" The question, direct and devastating, came from Olivia. Emily set down her spatula and took a deep breath. She had anticipated this conversation for years, rehearsing how much to share, how to explain abandonment without transferring the pain she'd experienced to her children. "It wasn't about not wanting you," she began carefully. "Your father chose not to be part of our lives, but that choice was about him, not about you. Some people aren't ready for the responsibility of parenthood." "Was he a bad person?" Ethan asked, his young face serious. Emily considered this. "No, not bad. He made choices I disagree with, but people are complicated. The important thing to understand is that his absence has nothing to do with your worth." "Do you ever miss him?" Olivia asked, watching her mother closely. "No," Emily answered honestly. "I built a beautiful life with you two. I don't waste time missing what might have been." The conversation shifted to Ethan's science project as they ate their pancakes, the moment of vulnerability passing into the comfortable routine of their Sunday planning session. Yet Emily knew the questions would return, evolving as the twins grew older and developed a more nuanced understanding of their origin story. Later that afternoon, as Emily reviewed quarterly projections for Manhattan Commercial in her home office, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Reynolds Hotel's CEO Franklin Reynolds steps down, son Nathan to take helm. The accompanying photo showed Nathan Reynolds in an impeccable suit, his expression confident as he stood beside his ailing father at a press conference. Emily studied his face, older now with subtle lines around his eyes but still handsome in that manufactured way of the exceptionally privileged. She felt nothing beyond a distant recognition, as if observing a character from a half-forgotten story. The following Tuesday, Emily found herself navigating the sleek corridors of a real estate office in Manhattan, the twins waiting in the reception area with their homework. The agent, a polished woman named Serena, spread glossy photographs across her desk. "This property just came on the market yesterday," she explained, tapping a particularly stunning image. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, doorman building on the Upper West Side, just 3 blocks from Central Park. The owners are relocating to London and need to sell quickly. Emily examined the photographs carefully. The apartment was spacious and sun-filled with hardwood floors and large windows overlooking the city. "It's beautiful," she admitted, "but probably out of my price range." Serena named a figure that would have been unimaginable to Emily just a few years earlier. Now, with Manhattan Commercial servicing 50 major buildings and employing over 400 people, it was within reach. A stretch, but possible. "The twins would have their own rooms," Emily murmured, more to herself than to Serena. "Shall we see it today?" The owners approved a showing this afternoon. 2 hours later, Emily watched as Olivia and Ethan explored the apartment, their excitement palpable as they claimed bedrooms and envisioned their lives in this new space. Olivia immediately identified the perfect corner for her music stand, while Ethan calculated the dimensions of the built-in bookshelves that would house his growing collection of science texts. Standing in the spacious living room, Emily felt a sense of vertigo at how far they had come. From the tiny studio in the Bronx where the twins had spent their first months, to this elegant pre-war apartment in one of Manhattan's most desirable neighborhoods, the trajectory seemed unreal. "We'll take it," she told Serena, decision made. The move coincided with an unexpected development at Olivia's school. Her music teacher had recommended her for an audition with Juilliard's pre-college division, an elite Saturday program for gifted young musicians. "She has exceptional talent," Mr. Abernathy explained during a parent-teacher conference. "Her technical ability is impressive, but it's her interpretive sense that's truly remarkable. She feels the music in a way that can't be taught." The audition was scheduled for early December. Emily hired a professional coach to help Olivia prepare, rearranging her own schedule to ensure she could attend every practice session. The night before the audition, she found Olivia sitting on the floor of her new bedroom, violin beside her, staring out at the city lights. "Nervous?" Emily asked, sitting beside her daughter. "What if I'm not good enough?" Olivia whispered, voicing the fear that lurked beneath her composed exterior. Emily recognized the echo of her own insecurities in her daughter's question. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "You are more than good enough. But even if tomorrow doesn't go as hoped, your worth isn't determined by any audition." "Dad thought you weren't good enough," Olivia said suddenly. "That's why he left, isn't it?" The statement, so direct and perceptive, caught Emily off guard. "Who told you that?" "No one. I just figured it out. You always say it wasn't about us, that it was his choice. So he must have thought something about you wasn't enough." Emily chose her words carefully. "Your father and I came from very different worlds. He was under pressure to maintain certain appearances, to marry someone from his social circle. He chose that path instead of creating a family with us." "That's stupid," Olivia declared with the black and white judgment of youth. Emily smiled. "Life gets complicated, but yes, I think he made a poor choice." The next morning, Olivia played Tchaikovsky with such emotion that the Juilliard panel called Emily immediately after the audition to offer a place in their program. The acceptance came with a partial scholarship, recognition of both Olivia's talent and their financial circumstances. That evening, they celebrated with Ethan's favorite takeout, spread across their new dining table. "To Olivia," Emily toasted with sparkling cider, "whose music will touch hearts across the world someday." "And to Ethan," Olivia added, "who's going to win the state math competition next month." Ethan grinned, his confidence in his mathematical abilities absolute. He had recently been selected for an advanced program that allowed him to take high school algebra despite being in 7th grade. Numbers spoke to him the way music spoke to Olivia, a language he intuitively understood. 2 weeks before Christmas, Emily was reviewing applications for new team leaders when her phone buzzed with a news notification. Reynolds Hotels acquires luxury chain, expands global footprint. The accompanying article detailed Nathan's first major move as CEO, an acquisition that financial analysts praised as strategic brilliance. Emily skimmed the article, a wry smile playing at her lips. Manhattan Commercial had recently signed a contract to service the very building where Reynolds Hotels had its corporate headquarters. A coincidence Emily found privately satisfying, though she had never mentioned the connection to her staff. The holidays passed in a blur of activity: Olivia's winter recital, Ethan's science fair victory, Manhattan Commercial's end-of-year party where Emily distributed substantial bonuses to her growing team. By the time January arrived, bringing with it a fresh blanket of snow across the city, the Johnsons had settled comfortably into their new home and routines. One evening, as Emily helped Ethan with an advanced geometry problem, he looked up suddenly. "Mom, why don't we ever talk about our father?" Emily set down her pencil. "We do sometimes. You've asked questions and I've answered them. But not details, not his name or where he lives or anything specific. I've always felt those details weren't necessary for you to have happy, fulfilled lives," Emily explained. "He chose not to be part of our family. That's the important fact. Was it because he didn't want kids?" Ethan persisted. Emily sighed, recognizing that at 12 the twins were old enough for a more complete version of the truth. "Your father came from a wealthy family with certain expectations. When I told him I was pregnant, he made it clear that we, didn't fit into the life he had planned. He rejected us," Ethan stated flatly. "He rejected the path that included us," Emily corrected gently. "And in doing so, he missed out on knowing two extraordinary people." Later, after the twins had gone to bed, Emily sat on the terrace of their new apartment, looking out at the city lights. She had built this life from nothing, had transformed herself from the desperate, abandoned young woman sleeping on a shelter cot to the CEO of a thriving company, mother to two remarkable children, owner of a beautiful home in one of the world's most competitive cities. And somewhere in that same city, Nathan Reynolds continued his privileged existence, unaware of the incredible children who shared his DNA, oblivious to the success of the woman he had once deemed insufficient. As she looked out at the illuminated skyline of Manhattan from her new terrace, Emily couldn't possibly know that in just 3 years she would stand face to face with Nathan Reynolds once again, in circumstances that would forever change the balance of power between them. As she looked out at the illuminated skyline of Manhattan from her new terrace, Emily couldn't possibly know that in just 3 years she would stand face to face with Nathan Reynolds once again, in circumstances that would forever change the balance of power between them. The summer morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Manhattan Commercial Cleaning Services headquarters, illuminating the sleek conference room where Emily Johnson stood before her executive team. At 37, she exuded a quiet confidence that came from building something substantial from nothing. Her tailored navy suit, Armani, purchased to celebrate their 100th corporate client, was a far cry from the threadbare uniform she'd worn as a hotel receptionist 15 years earlier. "Our second quarter results exceeded projections by 17%, Emily announced, sliding her finger across her tablet to display the next chart on the wall-mounted screen. "The new contract with One World Trade Center has been renewed for another 5 years with an 18% increase in service fees." Her director of operations, Maria, one of her original 3 employees, smiled broadly. "That puts us in 78 of Manhattan's largest commercial buildings. And brings our annual revenue to $87 million, added Jasmine, who had risen from administrative assistant to CFO over the past decade, a 32% increase over last year. Emily allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she surveyed the team she'd built. The company that had begun with a desperate young mother cleaning offices with babies strapped to her back now employed over 1,200 people, primarily women, many of whom had been given second chances when other employers had written them off. "We have a new potential client inquiry," Jasmine continued, consulting her tablet. "A last-minute request for the Plaza Hotel. They need a specialized cleaning team for a high-profile event this weekend." Emily raised an eyebrow. "The Plaza? That's premium territory. What's the event?" "A wedding," Jasmine replied. "Apparently their regular service backed out unexpectedly, and they're willing to pay triple our standard rate for the emergency accommodation." "Whose wedding requires that kind of expedited service?" asked Carlos, their relatively new director of client relations. Jasmine scrolled through the request details. It doesn't specify in the initial inquiry, just says it's a high-profile society event requiring absolute discretion and exceptional service. Sounds intriguing, Emily mused. Send me the complete details when they come through. If the terms are favorable, we'll assemble our premium team. The meeting concluded with assignments distributed and strategies confirmed. As her team filed out, Emily remained at the conference table, reviewing the One World Trade Center contract renewal. The signature at the bottom, her signature, represented everything she'd fought to achieve since that devastating night when Nathan Reynolds had walked out of her life, leaving her pregnant, alone, and facing eviction. Later that afternoon, Emily was reviewing staffing projections when Jasmine knocked on her office door, her expression peculiar. "The Plaza Hotel contract details came through," she said, placing a folder on Emily's desk. "You might want to look at this yourself." Emily opened the file and scanned the first page. Her breath caught as she saw the names of the bride and groom, Nathan Reynolds and Madison Parker. For a moment she sat perfectly still, absorbing the cosmic irony of the situation. Nathan Reynolds, the man who had once called her mediocre, common, dead weight, was getting married, and his venue needed her company's services. "Is everything all right?" Jasmine asked, concern evident in her voice. Emily composed her features into professional neutrality. "Yes, perfectly fine. It's just an interesting coincidence. I once knew the groom, many years ago." "Should we decline?" Jasmine's loyalty was immediate and unquestioning. Emily considered the question carefully. Declining would be the emotionally safe choice, avoiding potential complications or painful memories. But it would also mean allowing Nathan's ghost to dictate her business decisions, something she had promised herself she would never do. "No," she decided firmly. "This is a prestigious venue and an excellent opportunity to showcase our premium services. Prepare our standard contract with the expedited service fee structure. I'll personally oversee this event." After Jasmine left, Emily swiveled her chair to face the windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The Reynolds Hotel's headquarters was visible several blocks away, its distinctive blue glass architecture standing out among the surrounding buildings. For years, Emily had taken quiet satisfaction in knowing that her company cleaned the offices where Nathan worked, though he remained unaware of the connection. Now, the universe had presented an even more direct intersection of their paths. She wondered briefly what Nathan would think if he knew that the mediocre woman he'd abandoned was now running a multi-million-dollar enterprise that serviced his corporate headquarters. That evening, Emily arrived home to find 15-year-old Olivia practicing a particularly challenging Paganini piece in the living room. The melodic complexity filled the apartment, a testament to her daughter's extraordinary talent. After her acceptance to Juilliard's preparatory division at 12, Olivia had flourished, developing a technical precision and emotional depth that had her instructors predicting a brilliant career. Ethan sat at the dining table, surrounded by components of what appeared to be a half-assembled robot. At 15, he had already won a national robotics competition, his mathematical brilliance complemented by an intuitive understanding of engineering principles that regularly astonished his teachers. As Emily set her briefcase down, Ethan looked up. "Mom, can we go to the plaza for afternoon tea this weekend? I need to take measurements of their grand staircase for my architectural modeling project." The coincidence was too perfect. Emily hesitated briefly before responding. "Actually, we could. I have a new client event there this weekend, a wedding. Perhaps we could meet afterward for tea." Olivia lowered her violin. "A wedding at the plaza? That sounds extravagant." "It is," Emily agreed, choosing her words carefully. "It's for someone I used to know, actually, many years ago." Something in her tone must have alerted the twins to the significance of the statement. Both watched her with the perceptive intensity that sometimes unnerved Emily. They missed nothing, these children of hers. "Someone important?" Ethan probed gently. Emily considered how much to share. She had never hidden their father's existence from them, but neither had she dwelled on his identity or the circumstances of his abandonment. They knew only that he had chosen not to be part of their lives, a decision Emily had always framed as his loss rather than theirs. "Someone from a different chapter of my life," she answered finally. "It was a long time ago." The twins exchanged a look but didn't press further, another quality Emily appreciated about her children. They understood boundaries and respected them, a trait she'd consciously cultivated in their upbringing. The following day, Emily met with her premium services team to prepare for the Plaza event. The wedding of Nathan Reynolds and Madison Parker was clearly a high society affair, with an expected guest list of 300 of New York's elite. The requirements were exacting: pre-event preparation, discreet staffing during the reception to maintain immaculate conditions, and thorough cleaning afterward. "This is a significant opportunity," Emily told her team. "The Plaza hosts some of the most prestigious events in the city. Impressing them could open doors to similar venues." As the day of the wedding approached, Emily found herself increasingly reflective. She had not seen Nathan in 15 years, not since that devastating night when he had dismissed her and their unborn children from his life with cruel efficiency. She had no intention of making her presence known at his wedding. She would be there strictly in a professional capacity, overseeing her team's work from the background. Yet she couldn't help wondering what it would be like to glimpse him after all this time. Would he recognize her? Would he feel anything at all if he did? The woman she was now bore little resemblance to the vulnerable young receptionist he had discarded. Her success, built through relentless determination and sacrifice, was the most eloquent response to his dismissal. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. Emily dressed with particular care, choosing a discreet but impeccably tailored blue suit that conveyed authority without drawing attention. Her team had already begun preparation at the Plaza, ensuring every surface gleamed, every detail was perfect. "You look especially nice today," Olivia observed as Emily prepared to leave. "Is it because of the wedding client?" Emily smiled, adjusting her pearl earrings, a gift to herself when Manhattan Commercial had signed its 50th major client. Professional presentation matters, especially with premium clients. "We'll meet you at the Plaza around 4, Ethan confirmed, looking up from his architectural sketches. "Perfect. The ceremony ends at 3, and we'll be managing the transition to the reception. I should be free by 4. Emily gathered her things, checking that her phone and tablet were fully charged. "Don't be late. I've reserved the best table for afternoon tea." As Emily's driver navigated through Saturday traffic toward the Plaza, she reviewed the event schedule on her tablet. The ceremony would take place in the terrace room, followed by a reception in the grand ballroom. Her team was already in position, ready to maintain immaculate conditions throughout the event while remaining virtually invisible to the guests. The Plaza Hotel stood majestically at the corner of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South, its Beaux-Arts facade a testament to old New York elegance. Emily entered through the service entrance, immediately greeted by her operations manager. "Everything's proceeding perfectly," Maria reported. "The ceremony space is ready, and we're prepared for the quick turnover to the reception." Emily nodded approvingly as she inspected the preparation areas. Her team moved with practiced efficiency, their uniforms crisp, their movements precise. 15 years of building this company, of refining processes and cultivating excellence, had created an operation that functioned with clockwork precision. As the ceremony time approached, Emily positioned herself discreetly in a service corridor with a partial view of the proceedings. From this vantage point, she could monitor her team's work while remaining unseen by the wedding party and guests. The terrace room filled with New York's elite, politicians, celebrities, business magnates. Emily recognized many faces from news coverage and business publications, and then, standing at the front of the room, she saw him. Nathan Reynolds at 41 looked much as she might have expected, still handsome in a polished, privileged way, his dark hair now threaded with distinguished silver at the temples. His tuxedo was undoubtedly bespoke, his posture confident as he greeted arriving guests. Emily felt nothing beyond a clinical observation, as if studying a stranger. The ceremony proceeded without incident, and Emily's team executed the transition to the reception flawlessly. As guests moved to the grand ballroom for cocktails, her staff discreetly refreshed the ceremony space, removing any evidence of use in preparation for evening events. Emily was supervising this process when a server rushing past collided with another, sending a tray of champagne glasses crashing to the floor just outside the ballroom entrance. The sound drew immediate attention, and Emily moved quickly to manage the situation. "Secure the area," she instructed two team members as she knelt to assess the damage. "Standard protocol for glass cleanup." Her team responded immediately, setting up caution indicators and beginning the careful removal of broken crystal. Emily was directing the operation, focused entirely on efficient resolution, when a voice behind her froze her in place. "Emily?" Adjusting her traje, Armani perfectly tailored before entering the Plaza Hotel's ballroom for a final inspection, Emily couldn't predict that in the next few hours, the wedding her company had been hired to service would become the stage for a confrontation that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. "Emily?" The voice froze her in place, familiar despite the 15 years that had passed since she'd last heard it. For a moment, Emily remained perfectly still, kneeling beside the broken glass, her back to the source of that single questioning word. Then, with deliberate composure, she rose and turned. Nathan Reynolds stood before her, impeccable in his custom tuxedo, his expression a mixture of disbelief and confusion. He looked older, of course, fine lines around his eyes, touches of silver at his temples, but unmistakably the same man who had once dismissed her as unworthy of his world. "Hello, Nathan," Emily replied, her voice steady and professional. "Congratulations on your wedding." His eyes traveled over her, taking in the tailored Armani suit, the confident posture, the air of authority that now surrounded her. This wasn't the desperate young woman he'd abandoned. This was someone else entirely. "What are you? How are you?" He struggled to form a coherent question, clearly blindsided by her presence. "My company is providing services for your event," Emily explained with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Manhattan Commercial Cleaning Services. Perhaps you've heard of us? We also maintain the Reynolds Hotel's headquarters in the financial district." Nathan's expression shifted as he processed this information, his brow furrowing as he attempted to reconcile the Emily before him with the one he'd discarded 15 years ago. Before he could respond, a woman in a stunning Vera Wang wedding gown approached, her diamond jewelry catching the light with each graceful movement. "Darling, is everything all right? We need to greet the senator and—" Madison Parker, almost Reynolds, paused, noticing the tension between her new husband and the elegant woman in the blue suit. "Hello, I don't believe we've met." "Emily Johnson, CEO of Manhattan Commercial," Emily introduced herself, extending her hand with professional courtesy. "Just checking that everything is in order for your special day." Madison smiled warmly. "Oh yes, your staff has been wonderful. We had a last-minute crisis when our regular service canceled, and your team swooped in to save the day." "We specialize in solving problems efficiently," Emily replied, acutely aware of Nathan's continued stare. "How do you two know each other?" Madison asked, her intuition picking up on the undercurrent of tension. The silence that followed her innocent question seemed to stretch endlessly. Nathan's face had drained of color, his composure, typically unshakable in business negotiations and social settings, visibly crumbling. It was at that precise moment that the grand doors to the ballroom opened, and Olivia and Ethan entered. Both were dressed elegantly, Olivia in a simple blue dress that highlighted her graceful posture, Ethan in a tailored blazer that made him look older than his 15 years. They scanned the room, quickly spotting their mother among the glittering crowd. "Mom, sorry to interrupt, but Ms. Martinez called and needs to speak with you about tomorrow's event at the Chrysler Building," Olivia said as they approached, her poised demeanor a testament to years of performance training at Juilliard. Nathan froze, his gaze locked on Ethan. The resemblance was undeniable, the same jawline, the same eyes, the same confident set of the shoulders. Even a stranger would have recognized the genetic connection, and Nathan was no stranger. His eyes darted to Olivia, finding echoes of himself there too, though softened by Emily's features. "These are your children?" Madison asked, admiring the well-mannered teenagers. "Yes," Emily answered with unmistakable pride. "Olivia and Ethan, my twins." "Twins?" The word barely escaped Nathan's lips, more breath than voice. Understanding began to dawn on Madison's face as she looked between the teenagers and her husband. The resemblance was impossible to miss, especially with Ethan standing just feet away from Nathan, like a younger version of the same person. "Nathan, you know them?" Madison's voice had taken on a different quality. Cautious, suspicious. Emily maintained her composure, though her heart raced. This wasn't how she had planned for the twins to discover their father's identity, but perhaps there was no good way for such a revelation to occur. "Mr. Reynolds and I knew each other many years ago," Emily explained carefully, "when I worked as a receptionist at one of his hotels." Madison's expression transformed as the pieces fell into place. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, flicking between Nathan and the twins with growing comprehension. "These are your children, Nathan?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. The surrounding conversations in the ballroom gradually quieted as guests became aware of the unfolding drama. Important figures in business and politics, many with phones discreetly recording, watched with increasing interest. I didn't know they were twins," Nathan finally managed, inadvertently confirming his paternity with those stumbling words. "You didn't know?" Madison took a step back, her wedding gown rustling softly against the marble floor. "Then you knew about the pregnancy? You have children you never acknowledged?" The twins, now understanding the situation, looked at Nathan with expressions that mingled shock and curiosity. Years of wondering about their father had culminated in this unexpected moment, face to face with the man whose DNA they carried but whose life had continued without them. "Mom?" Ethan turned to Emily, seeking explanation, his brilliant mind rapidly connecting dots that had remained separate until this moment. Emily took a deep breath. "Yes, Ethan. Nathan is your biological father. He chose not to be part of our lives when he learned I was pregnant." Nathan, desperate to contain the situation, reached for Emily's arm. "We need to discuss this privately. This is inappropriate." "Take your hands off her," Olivia commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention through music. "You lost the right to touch my mother 15 years ago." The girl's fierce protection struck Nathan like a physical blow. He withdrew his hand, staring at this daughter he had never known, this poised, confident young woman who looked at him with such clear judgment. Madison's face had crumpled, tears streaking her carefully applied makeup. "You told me you never had children, that you always wanted to start a family with me." Her voice rose with each word, carrying across the now silent ballroom. "And all this time—" "Madison, please, I can explain," Nathan pleaded, reaching for his bride. "Explain what?" Madison demanded. "That you abandoned your pregnant girlfriend and your own children? That you've been lying to me our entire relationship?" The murmurs among the guests grew louder. Emily recognized several board members from Reynolds Hotels among the crowd, their expressions grave as they witnessed their CEO's public unraveling. "It wasn't like that," Nathan insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "It was complicated. My father had expectations." "You were 26 years old," Madison exclaimed, "not some teenager who couldn't make his own decisions." Emily placed protective hands on the twins' shoulders. "We should go," she said quietly. "This is between Nathan and Madison now." "Wait!" Nathan's voice carried a note of desperation. "You can't just leave. We need to talk about this." Emily regarded him coolly. "Now you want to talk?" 15 years too late, Nathan. They're my children too," he insisted, gesturing toward the twins. "Biologically, perhaps," Emily conceded. "But parenthood is about more than DNA. It's about being there, for midnight fevers and first steps, for homework struggles and childhood fears. It's about showing up every single day." The twins stood tall beside their mother, their posture reflecting years of security and love despite the absence of a father. "I want to know them," Nathan said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "I have that right." Madison gave a bitter laugh. "Rights? You're talking about rights now?" She twisted the massive diamond ring from her finger and threw it in Nathan's direction. It skittered across the marble floor, coming to rest near the wedding cake display. "The wedding is cancelled. Apparently my fiancé already has a family he chose to abandon." The announcement rippled through the crowd. Phones emerged openly now, capturing the society scandal unfolding before them. Nathan stood paralyzed, watching his carefully constructed world collapse around him. Emily turned to leave, guiding the twins toward the door. The three moved in unison, a united front formed through years of relying solely on each other. "Emily, wait," Nathan called after them, his voice echoing in the grand space. "We need to resolve this." She paused at the doorway, turning to face the man who had once shattered her world with casual cruelty. "There's nothing to resolve, Nathan. I built a life without you, a beautiful, successful life. The twins have thrived without knowing you. Whatever you're seeking now, it isn't for them. It's for you." As they exited the ballroom, leaving behind the murmuring crowd and shell-shocked couple, Ethan spoke quietly. "That's really him? Our biological father?" Emily nodded, guiding them toward the hotel lobby. "Yes, I'm sorry you had to find out this way." "He looks like me," Ethan observed, his tone contemplative rather than emotional. "You look like you," Emily corrected gently. "You are your own person, shaped by your own experiences and choices." Olivia walked silently beside them, her musician's hands clenched tightly at her sides. Finally, she asked, "Did he really say those things to you? That you weren't enough for his world?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but he was wrong. I was always enough. He just couldn't see it." As they reached the ornate lobby, the sounds of disruption continued to echo from the ballroom. Madison's voice carried down the corridor, followed by the concerned murmurs of guests and wedding planners attempting to manage the unfolding disaster. "I think we'll skip tea today," Emily said, pulling out her phone to call their driver. "We can have it at home instead." The twins nodded in agreement, both still processing the momentous encounter. As they waited for their car, Emily watched her children, these remarkable human beings she had raised alone, who had flourished despite every obstacle. In that moment, surrounded by the opulence of the Plaza Hotel where Nathan's wedding was imploding, Emily felt not vindication but a profound sense of peace. While the society wedding dissolved into scandal behind them, Emily couldn't know that by the next morning the New York Times would feature the story on its front page. "Scandal at the Plaza. CEO of Reynolds abandons twin children for 15 years, forever altering the trajectory of the Reynolds empire." While the society wedding dissolved into scandal behind them, Emily couldn't know that by the next morning, the New York Times would feature the story on its front page. "Scandal at the Plaza. CEO of Reynolds abandons twin children for 15 years, forever altering the trajectory of the Reynolds empire." The Johnson family's car had barely pulled away from the plaza when Emily's phone began vibrating incessantly with notifications. News of the confrontation was already spreading through social media like wildfire, with guests posting discreet footage of Madison's dramatic announcement and the cancelled wedding. Emily silenced her device and turned to the twins, who sat unusually quiet, processing the momentous encounter. "Are you both all right?" she asked, studying their expressions. Ethan nodded slowly, his analytical mind visibly working through the implications. "It's strange," All these years he was just this abstract concept. Now he's a real person with a face. A face that looks disturbingly like yours, Olivia added, her musician's fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on her knee. Did you know we would see him today, Mom? Emily shook her head. No, I knew I was managing his wedding, but I planned to remain behind the scenes. The glass breaking, that was pure coincidence. Or fate, Ethan suggested with a wry smile that reminded Emily painfully of Nathan. Back at their Upper West Side apartment, Emily prepared tea while the twins changed out of their formal clothes. The familiar ritual provided comfort amid the emotional turbulence of the afternoon. When they gathered in the living room, the questions began in earnest. Why didn't you ever tell us who he was specifically? Olivia asked, cradling her teacup. Emily considered her response carefully. I wanted you to form your identities without the shadow of his rejection. The Reynolds name carries weight in this city. I didn't want that to define you. All those times we asked about him, Ethan mused, you never said anything negative. Even today you were composed. Bitterness would only have poisoned our lives, Emily replied simply. I chose to focus on building something positive instead. The following morning, the confrontation at the plaza dominated the New York Times front page. Scandal at the plaza. CEO of Reynolds abandons twin children for 15 years. Screamed the headline above a photo someone had captured of Nathan staring in shock at Ethan, their resemblance unmistakable even in the grainy image. Smaller stories appeared in every major tabloid, each with increasingly sensational details. Emily sighed as she surveyed the coverage during her morning coffee. She had hoped to shield the twins from public scrutiny, but that possibility had vanished the moment Madison Parker had thrown her engagement ring across the plaza's marble floor. By mid-morning, the Reynolds Hotel's public relations team had issued a terse statement. Mr. Reynolds acknowledges that personal matters emerged during what should have been a private celebration. He asks for privacy during this time and remains committed to leading Reynolds Hotels into its next chapter of global expansion. The statement's corporate sterility only fueled further speculation. By afternoon, business channels reported that Reynolds Hotels' stock had dropped 18%, with investors concerned about leadership stability and potential scandal fallout. 3 days after the plaza incident, Emily received a call from a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Johnson, this is Gerald Weintraub, attorney for Nathan Reynolds, announced a clipped voice. Mr. Reynolds would like to arrange a meeting to discuss recent events and potential arrangements for the children. Emily's grip tightened on the phone. My children are not a business matter to be negotiated, Mr. Weintraub. Nevertheless, my client has parental rights he wishes to explore. Would tomorrow at 2 work for you? At our offices? Emily declined the formal setting. If Mr. Reynolds wishes to speak with me, he can meet me at my office. 3 o'clock tomorrow. The following afternoon, Nathan arrived at Manhattan Commercial Headquarters looking distinctly uncomfortable. His tailored suit couldn't disguise the strain of the past few days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his customary confident posture had faltered slightly. Emily received him in her spacious corner office, the skyline of Manhattan forming a dramatic backdrop behind her desk. The contrast between this encounter and their last meeting 15 years ago could not have been more stark. She was no longer the desperate young woman pleading for acknowledgement, but a successful CEO on her own territory. Thank you for seeing me, Nathan began stiffly, declining her offer of water or coffee. This situation has become complicated. This situation has been my life for 15 years, Emily replied evenly. What do you want, Nathan? He cleared his throat. I'd like to establish a financial arrangement for the twins. A trust fund, educational expenses, perhaps property in their names. Emily leaned back in her chair, studying him. You think money is the solution? It's a start, he insisted. They deserve the Reynolds name and the privileges that come with it. They've done remarkably well without the Reynolds name or money, Emily observed. Olivia is already studying at Juilliard's pre-college division. Ethan just won a national robotics competition. They're thriving. Nathan appeared genuinely surprised. Juilliard? That's impressive. They're exceptional children, Nathan, but they're not items on a balance sheet to be settled. What do you want then? Frustration tinged his voice. Emily met his gaze steadily. Absolutely nothing. This is the part you never understood. I built an entire life that doesn't need you in any aspect. It's not about revenge. It's about moving forward. Nathan's expression faltered. Madison has called off the wedding permanently. The board is questioning my leadership. Everything is falling apart because of one moment 15 years ago. Choices have consequences, Emily said simply. Some just take longer to manifest than others. When Nathan left, Emily remained at her window, watching his diminished figure disappear into the busy Manhattan street below. The confrontation had brought neither satisfaction nor closure, just the quiet certainty that she had built something far more valuable than anything he could have offered. That evening, Emily discussed the meeting with the twins, honoring her commitment to transparency about matters that affected them directly. "He wants to give us money," she explained as they sat around their dining table, "and the Reynolds name." "We already have a name," Olivia stated firmly. "Johnson." Ethan looked thoughtful. "Would we have to see him regularly if we accepted?" "That would be entirely your choice," Emily assured them. "You're 15, old enough to make decisions about relationships you want to pursue." After much discussion, the twins decided they were curious enough to meet their biological father once without commitment to ongoing contact. Emily arranged a lunch at a neutral restaurant, stepping back to allow them this exploration while remaining supportive. The meeting was predictably awkward. Nathan arrived with wrapped gifts, a premium violin case for Olivia and the latest engineering software for Ethan, clearly researched but impersonal. The twins accepted the presents politely, but maintained the reserved dignity Emily had instilled in them throughout their lives. "You're both so accomplished," Nathan observed, struggling to connect. "Your mother has done an amazing job." "She has," Ethan agreed simply. "Do you play any instruments?" Olivia asked suddenly. Nathan looked startled by the direct question. "No, I never had the patience for practice. Business was always my focus. Mom worked 3 jobs while getting her MBA at Harvard," Ethan commented. "She seems to have managed both patience and business quite well." The lunch concluded after an hour of stilted conversation. In the car afterward, Ethan summarized the experience succinctly. "He's just a man, not a monster, not a hero, just someone who made a bad choice." Olivia nodded in agreement. "I don't feel any connection to him. Is that strange?" "Not at all," Emily assured her. "Connections are built through shared experiences and trust, not just DNA." 6 months after the Plaza incident, Emily received a news alert that the Reynolds Hotels board had voted to replace Nathan as CEO, citing leadership concerns and damage to the company brand. The press release mentioned an interim leadership team while a search for a permanent replacement was conducted. The Reynolds Hotels stock had never fully recovered from the scandal. Madison Parker had given a candid interview to Vanity Fair, describing her shock at discovering Nathan's abandoned children and his pattern of deception throughout their relationship. Corporate sponsors had quietly distanced themselves from the brand, and several high-profile partnerships had been cancelled. Emily felt no triumph at this news. Nathan's professional downfall brought her no joy. It was merely the natural consequence of choices made long ago, accelerated by the public nature of their confrontation. Meanwhile, Manhattan Commercial continued its expansion, opening offices in Boston and Washington, D.C. Emily's management approach, emphasizing employee well-being, technological innovation, and exceptional service, had transformed an entire industry segment. When Forbes featured her on their cover with the headline "The Cleaning Queen: How Emily Johnson Built an Empire from Nothing," she smiled at the irony. The tiny apartment Nathan had deemed too small for him could now fit entirely within her executive office. 1 year after the Plaza confrontation, Emily stood at the podium of a business leadership conference, addressing a room filled with entrepreneurs and executives. The twins sat in the front row, now 16 and increasingly independent, but still her strongest supporters. "Success isn't measured by how high you climb," she told the audience, "but by the foundation you build. 15 years ago, I was a single mother with newborn twins, working as a night cleaner while pursuing my education. Today, our company employs over 1,500 people, primarily women who might otherwise be overlooked by traditional employers." She paused, meeting the proud gazes of her children. The true measure of achievement isn't in revenue figures or client lists. It's in creating something sustainable that improves lives, including your own. Later, as they walked together along Central Park in the spring sunshine, Ethan asked the question that had lingered since the confrontation. "Do you ever regret how things happened with him? If he had stayed, our lives would have been completely different." Emily considered this thoughtfully. "Different, yes. Better? I'm not so sure. We built something remarkable together, the three of us. There's no guarantee that would have happened on an easier path." "I like our path," Olivia stated with characteristic certainty. "I like who we are because of it." Emily squeezed her daughter's hand, watching Ethan race ahead to examine the architectural details of the Bethesda Terrace. The empire she had built, both her business and her family, stood as testament not to Nathan's absence, but to her own resilience. Years later, when asked in an interview about her greatest achievement, Emily Johnson would look beyond her business empire valued at hundreds of millions and answer simply, "Proving that being enough was never the question. The question was always about being extraordinary, with or without the approval of those who couldn't see my value." If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.